a kind, more like the people in the world seeking perspectives with a different.
Welcome back to Hard NOC Life. I'm your host, Keith Chow. I've been gone for a couple weeks. Took some time off. Had Angela and Nelson sub in for a couple episodes, but now I'm back, and I'm better than ever. Can't wait to do another episode of Hard NOC Life, because one of the reasons I decided to come back is that I wanted to talk about a new movie that's been in the theaters for a couple weeks now. We've been writing about it seemingly nonstop on the Nerds of Color over the last couple weeks, and that's a movie from Disney called Big Hero 6. And I'm lucky to have a couple of guests tonight to join us to talk about the movie, including one of the creators of the original comics that the movie is based on. So without further ado, I want to bring on our first guest tonight. She is the newest Nerd of Color on the blog. You may have read her introduction, and she also did her first recap for us after watching The Flash the other night. Please welcome to A Hard NOC Life, it's Christelle Gonzales.
Getting the hang of being, like, locked into Nerds of Color, because I'm, like, slowly getting there. I got to live tweet the other day, and that was fun.
Yeah, no, you've been great. You've been great. You've been a wonderful addition to our little board
It makes me
collective.
want to curse more than usual when I'm not on my name for some reason. I don't know why.
Feel
like,
free. Feel free.
Yeah.
We
The inner troll in me was coming out. I just wanted to say everything. Like,
Well, welcome to your first Hard NOC Live. We're just knocking everything out of the way. You're
Yeah.
doing recaps, you're doing live tweets, now you're doing the Hard NOC Live. So, how's it feel?
it's nice. I'm just cannonballing in. I mean, I feel like I have no one to talk to about all the nerdy things in life. So now it's just like all of a sudden there are so many other nerds to talk to, and it's fun.
That's why we're here. Well, the nerdy topic of the evening is a little movie called Big Hero 6 that I think you said you've already watched multiple times. So
Yeah.
before we bring our special guest on, I just wanted to get your take. What did you think of the film? You're also like a Disney freak too. I mean, I think you have a thing for Disney movies in general. But what was your opinion of Big Hero 6, and what brought you to the movie a second or third? How many times have you seen it?
I've only seen it twice. I mean, it's been 2 weeks. It came out November 7th, and I did see it November 7th. So I just wanted
First
to
in
know.
line.
Yeah. But, and I saw it late too, so I'm kind of sad that I wasn't in a crowd with a whole bunch of kids. I do like to watch movies with like babies in the crowd, because I love to hear like the giggles and like the screams. But I mean, I did hear the sniffles.
Right.
So, did we say spoiler alert? Are we supposed to say spoiler alert?
Well, like you said, the movie's been out 2 weeks, so
Yeah,
spoil
so it's
away.
their fault. It's everyone's fault if you haven't seen it. But yeah, I really liked it. It did that thing where, you're watching a kid's movie and then you realize you're crying because it doesn't feel like a kid's movie. But I think the big thing here, and why we're talking about it on Nerds of Color, is like the heroes here look like people that you see every day. It's not just a whole bunch of, little white teenagers or little white kids. It's
Right.
there are brown kids, and there are Asian kids, and there's a black man who's smart, like all of them are so smart, and they all work together, and I think that it's super important that people see it. So that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's funny. Like, it opened the same weekend that another film that we've talked about on the Nerds of Color opened, called Interstellar. Both opened the same. Big Hero 6 actually beat it at the box office the opening weekend, which was expected. But in both films, like, they're both kind of odes to science, which is kind of great, and show like women being astrophysicists and engineers, and it's awesome. The difference is that, like you said, Interstellar, as good, or your mileage may vary if those of you who don't like Interstellar, but as good or not good as you think it is, it's still a bunch of white folks saving the planet. Whereas Big Hero 6 says, people of color can also be heroes, and I think that's what at least speaks to a lot of people on our side of the fence, as it were. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, I mean, and I've also heard like a lot of audiences are really, really mixed. Like there are a lot of different backgrounds taking their families to see the movies because they're excited that it's not a bunch of just white characters, you know. So they want their kids to see the that um, Asians could be like the good guy in the movie and stuff. So I
Yeah.
really like that.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. So one of the things about Big Hero 6, it is Disney's latest phenomenon. It's too early to tell if it's going to reach like Frozen level of like cultural permanence, but it is a merch maven because I have all the Big Hero 6 merchandise already. So we may yet see kids dressed up like Baymax next year for Halloween.
I have it on good authority that the Baymax, like the soft, huggable ones, they're sold out in the stores. They're sold out in Disneyland.
They're soft,
and they're
huggable.
sold out. Yeah, I call them marshmallow Baymaxes, and they're like
Nice.
they're like maybe 16 inches, and they're so they're like stuffed animals. But it's the soft Baymax, and those are sold out in Disneyland, in the stores, and online as of right now. So, I mean, it might be another Elsa dress or whatever that is.
Maybe. But one of the things, even though it is Disney's latest blockbuster, what some people may not know is that Big Hero 6 actually started out as a Marvel comic. It's essentially the next installment of Marvel's dominance of the cinema, in that it's another superhero team, much like the Guardians of the Galaxy that mainstream America may not have been familiar with, that is now, household names the world over. And we are actually fortunate enough tonight to have one of the original creators of the second series of Big Hero 6 comics that came out in 2008. He is a comic book artist that's based out in California. He, like I said, is one of the co-creators of two of the breakout characters from the movie Big Hero 6, Wasabi and Fred. We have with us tonight the artist David Nakayama.
Excellent. We had some technical difficulties earlier, so I'm so pleased that this is actually working.
Well, welcome. Thank you, first of all, for joining us. It is an honor to have you on Hard NOC Life, despite the technical difficulties. And thank you for being on our special Big Hero 6 episode. So I wanted to clear some things up. So Big Hero 6, the original Marvel comic, came out in 1998, was created by Steven Seagal. But you came on with Chris Claremont 10 years later when they revitalized the book and the team for a miniseries, and that's where you introduced the two characters that I mentioned earlier. So can you talk a little bit about your involvement with the comic, how you and Chris came about bringing back Big Hero 6 after a decade of it being dormant at Marvel?
Sure. Yeah, the way the publishing worked was kind of interesting. As you said, it started out with Steven Seagal and Duncan Rouleau, who are now, I think, part of the Man of Action creative team that does a lot of animated work for Disney. And they created those characters originally. Later, they had a series called Sunfire and Big Hero 6, in which the four main characters plus Sunfire and another one I'm not remembering at the moment were the main guys. And then finally it got to the 2008 miniseries with Chris Claremont and myself. And what was interesting about that is it was kind of like a hard restart in a way, at least artistically. We didn't have Sunfire, we didn't have the other guy, so we had these two spots to fill in the comic, and that would eventually become Wasabi and Fred. So we had to design two new characters from scratch and actually redesign the entire team, almost like we were starting over. So if you compare the way that the characters looked when they first came out, there's a pretty massive visual shift on our series. We actually had the great fortune of being able to redesign those guys from the ground up, and that was one of the best parts of it. I'm so grateful that we had that opportunity.
Right.
In fact, if you look at Baymax in particular, he started off as this sort of green reptilian character,
Right.
And he was always a robot. They always called him a robot, but he kind of looked more like a mini kaiju,
Right.
And in our series, one of the fun things was we got to make him truly look like a mecha, and we gave Hero his now trademark anime crazy hair. and I'm so pleased that those elements and some other things made it to the movie. So I
Yeah.
didn't work on the movie, but I feel like I got my fingers in it anyway.
Well, one of the cool things that I noticed, this is something Christelle and I were talking about prior to the going live, but one of the cool things that I noticed in seeing the movie on the big screen is that typically when you see like these comic book films, you know, like a Superman film or Batman film, they'll say that, you know, based on the characters published by DC Comics, if you're lucky, they'll say Batman created by Bob Kane, they'll leave out Bill Finger. They'll say Superman created by Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel. The cool thing that I noticed in the theater is that they credited not only Duncan and Steven, but also you and Chris for the creations of some of the characters. So that was
team. Well, there were on the very end there were credits for 2 writers and 2 artists in addition to the original creators. So I thought it was pretty classy. I didn't expect a nod at all because I wasn't the original guy. I was like the reinterpreter guy that came along and made it a little more Japanese, you know, down the line.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about too, and we'll bring Christelle back in on this because one of the things that you brought up in your kind of appreciation for the film is to see that this was this multi-ethnic crew of superheroes, and one of the things about the comics that David worked on and the comics that the original comics from Marvel is that in actuality it was not as heterogeneous. It was actually a very homogenous team. It just happened to be a team that was all Japanese. Some people have taken issue with kind of like race bending, cross-racially casting the characters for the movie, which were all Japanese in the comics, to make some Latina, some black, some white, and even changing their nationality from being Japanese to being Japanese American in this hybrid San Francisco, you know, fictional city. Where do you stand on that, Christelle? Do you think it was actually a good thing for them to change the ethnicities of the characters? Do you think they should have kept it, you know, closer to the source material? Where do you land on that, Christelle?
I think that they knew that they wanted to represent, you know, the bigger world and the world that we live in right now and what you see. I don't think it was like a marketing move or anything. I think that they just wanted to be fairly representative of what our kids are living in right now, and that is a world full of different races and different backgrounds. And like the thing is, they don't mention the races in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you see it, but they're never like, oh, that's because you're Asian. You know, like they never make a nod to it or anything. It just kind of happens. I mean, even with Honey Lemon, you don't really know what she is, and I mean, they haven't confirmed anything, but just the actress is Genesis Rodriguez, and I know she's said that in her headcanon, the Honey Lemon is a Latina, you know, but never once is she like, oh, because my abuela, and she doesn't, you know, like she won't say that stuff, and I think it's really cool that it just exists, but it's not a main point. The only characters I think that they were like more obvious about it is Hiro and Tadashi, that they're half white, they're Hapa, and that's because like I think it's really cool how like in the house you can see the pictures, and then I think at one point you can see in the background Tadashi and his mom and his dad, but it's before Hiro was born, but they're in a traditional Japanese photo with the kimonos and it's kind of like stoic, but like that's like the most Japanese that you see them, but they're not trying to erase it, but they're not at the same time like being like, he's Japanese American, as a young Japanese American going to S-Fit, like yeah, so I think that's one of the things that one of the brilliant things that overlooked at it is that that's not the first point. You know, the first point is that they're all smart, they all work hard, and they all support each other. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So, David, as one of the, you know, original comic guys, at least, or one of the revitalizer guys of the comic, what was when you first found out, what was your response or reaction when you first found out that Disney was planning on taking Big Hero 6 and making, you know, a big Disney movie out of it, and two, when you saw that they were going to take the characters and remove them from Japan and make them not a Japanese like Alpha Flight, but more of like a, you know, one, make them all kids, and then two, make them Americans, for lack of a better word. And then more importantly, the fact that the two characters that you had a hand in creating, Fred and Wasabi, being, changed from being Japanese.
What was the first one?
What was your initial reaction when you found out that
that they were even doing it?
Yeah, Big Hero 6.
My gosh, it completely blew my mind. Completely. Like, it was the most unexpected thing that could have happened short of aliens landing on Earth. If you take it from my perspective, imagine, I'm a nobody comic book artist in 2008. The Big Hero 6 series did not, do gangbusters numbers. It wasn't a huge hit for Marvel. They didn't follow it up after that. I thought it was pretty much 6 months of my life that no one was ever remember, that very few people cared about, that was dustbin. No one thought about that. It was meaningful to me. I kept the original art. I was very proud of it. I thought we did a good job on the art as much as we could. I thought we had added a lot to it that hadn't been there before, and that was it. And years went by, and I didn't think about it, and then out of nowhere, Disney comes in and makes that whole thing completely relevant again. I couldn't believe it. And the coolest thing about it is, I guess getting to your second question, I think, is how did I react to the changes? Well,
yeah.
There wasn't anything we did that was holy. It wasn't like there was 60 years of history that had been proven out by financial success that they were going to go, that they should hew to, right? Like, it's not like Iron Man where the guy's been around forever and it works because it's a certain formula that people agree with. So Disney had the challenge of taking this book that they could see the potential in, but then figuring out how to pick and choose what elements were cool about it and which ones were maybe not so cool and which ones would work better on screen. So that all ties back into what Christelle was saying earlier about, it's sort of this post-racial take on these characters. It's irrelevant, who they are. It's just kind of interesting as an aside that they're a mixed group of characters, the way you'd see in a big city, or the way that you kind of hope, the world gets to at some point, this sort of post-racial utopia where that doesn't even matter. And they made the right choice. They made it a non-issue, and they made it relatable to everybody. And I'd be shocked if thought twice about race when they see that movie. They made it so approachable.
I like what you said, that it's like hopeful, because it is, in a way, like it being San Francisco, it's totally like a futuristic type of thing. There's no clear timeline. I mean, the technology they're using is obviously like something that we don't see, but yeah, we can hope for microbots and non-racial issues. Like, those are on the same page to me.
I just want floating fish balloon things.
Yeah, I wondered what that was. I mean, I was assuming that was their clean alternate energy source. Like they were like windmills in the sky capturing, energy and transporting it. But in giant like fish kites because it's Japanese.
Because it's Japan, yeah.
I feel like Hollywood has really gotten the memo on the whole, like, how to do race right in the media. There are so many examples that I can point to at this point, like on the Flash TV show, Iris Allen is black or part black, and it's not an issue. It just works. Or likewise, when they cast Dina Pilgrim in the upcoming Powers series, she's black. She's a great actress. That's not how it is in the comics, but nobody cares. It's still going to be a great show with a great actress, and that's wonderful that nobody cares.
Right. No, that's an excellent point. That's something that's come up multiple times at the Nerds of Color. The idea, and you're right that it does. I think Hollywood is slowly getting there. I think there's also there's still a lot of pushback from folks. I mean, just for example, Michael Jordan as Human Torch was not greeted with as much celebration, as it were, as Candace Patton as Iris West. But I think part of that is we're still getting there. I think there's definitely a long ways to go. But I think something like a Big Hero 6 and the fact that Big Hero 6 has completely blown up. I mean, that was the other thing with this movie was, people weren't sure before the movie came out whether or not was going to be another notch in Disney / Marvel's belt. It was a risk. Although I think again with Guardians of the Galaxy, Marvel kind of proved that literally you can take any comic book.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a whole Saturday Night Live skit about how like anything Marvel touches is gold.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think up until that point, I mean, you had Disney just had Frozen become this massive thing. If Disney hadn't had that kind of like zeitgeisty movie in the longest time, and they've done it again with Big Hero 6. And the important thing about Big Hero 6 is that one, it's the superhero thing, but it's also, I think, like what everyone's talking about, the fact that it's multicultural, that it could have easily, I mean, they could have easily said, we're going to take Big Hero 6 and we're going to make everybody white, too. I mean, that's not beyond the pale for something that Hollywood would do. I mean, you still hear rumblings about, like, an Akira movie or even Ghost in the Shell. Just a few months ago, there's talk about it starring Scarlett Johansson. So the fact that they would whitewash, Asian superheroes and make them not Asian anymore, it was completely something that I wouldn't have been surprised if it had happened, and especially with a property like Big Hero 6 that isn't as no offense, David, but isn't as loved by the community, the fanboy community, as as like an Iron Man or a Fantastic Four, right?
No, and I have to give Disney a lot of credit. The decisions they made and the way that they refocused the narrative in their movie versus the way that we did it in our comic, they were all really strong choices. And I found myself as I was watching the movie going, good call. Like the way you dealt with that was better than what we did, frankly.
Right.
I'm talking specifically about the way that the focus was on Hero and Baymax, and particularly Baymax. It was really, it was a story. It was easy to get your head around because it was a story about a boy who's missing his brother, who is basically finding this new brother for the most part. And the other characters are fun asides, but it's not really about the other four characters. They're just sort of along for the ride.
They're there to hug him.
Yeah. Our comic, it was split more evenly amongst the six, and I think because of that, it sort of lacked focus. It didn't have a relatable human element really to it, and it didn't have that thing you guys mentioned earlier about that, that sort of classic first act in animation where a big tragedy befalls the characters, and sort of powers the whole movie after that. We didn't have anything like that either. So at every point I was like, good decision, good job, guys.
Disney was also pretty respectful for the source material in the terms of what they kept. I mean, they were still recognizably the same characters, even if the races were different. They were still recognizably the same, and they kept a lot of the essence of the characters. Do you feel that was the case, Dave?
Yeah, I do, and I was blown away that they, with all the wholesale changes that they were making, I was blown away that they kept the names. Those are so hard to explain and justify, even on the comic page. I thought, if they're going to change something, that would be the first thing you'd be likely to change. But instead, they honored it, they kept it, and they found a way to make it work. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, go ahead, Christelle. We might say the same thing, but go ahead, Christelle.
I like the way that they explained Wasabi. It was just one line, and it was hilarious, and like it got a huge laugh in my theater. Like, I spilled wasabi on my shirt one time, and then that's it. Everybody's like, okay, so they all got their names that way.
Right. And I actually think there's a scene in the first third of the movie where Tadashi and Hiro are talking, and Tadashi is sort of lounging on Hiro's bed in the background, and talk about, if I'm right, this is the most respectful thing they could have done. I'm pretty sure he's reading Big Hero 6 #1, like from our mini-series in the bed. Next time you see the movie, check out that scene and see if you see what I see. But I did a double take when I saw it. I'm pretty sure that's what he's reading, and that's pretty rad that they put that in there.
That's really cool. Well, now Christelle has an excuse to go see it a third time now.
I know. Man, I was like, oh man, I missed it. But there is a scene where he's totally on the bed, and I was trying to see what he was reading, but you would know more than I would to recognize that cover. So that's awesome.
All in agree, but that cover has a really unusual sort of black bar that runs down the middle where we put the title. We're trying to be all graphic designy or something. What else could it be? I mean, it's a really unusual shape. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
No, that's cool.
You can look it up. Yeah.
Well, like I said, you would recognize your own cover. So I mean,
well, that's the funny thing, right? Like, it was like an Easter egg for me. Like,
Just for you. Because did you do that cover? You did the covers on that
I
run.
did.
Right? Yeah.
So
you would know.
I was psyched about it. Nobody else noticed because why would they?
No, but I again, it's funny that like a lot of any of the criticism, and there really isn't a lot of criticism of the film, but any of the criticism that existed were people saying that why couldn't they have kept them Japanese? Why couldn't have it would have been better if they kept it closer to the source material. But I think like you, I think they were able to tell an original story, but still keep the essence of the characters. And like beyond just the names, I mean, Honey Lemon, Go-Go, they're all even Wasabi and Fred having the most kind of like cosmetic changes, still retained a lot of the essence of the original characters. Because like for example, Wasabi in the book is a reluctant hero. I mean, he would rather be a sushi chef, but he's not like an OC engineer, but he's still good with blades and everything. But just like the Wasabi in the movie, they're both kind of reluctant to be the hero, but they step up when they have to. And Fred, I mean, I love that. The only thing that I wish is that they kept the Devil Dinosaur T-shirt on Fred in the movie, but I guess you can't get everything you want. But I mean, did you feel that since those are your characters, the characters you co-created, did you feel that they kept the essence of the characters that you envisioned when you were helping Chris design and create those characters?
Yeah, I mean the broad stroke is still there. I mean, as you said, they are the most different visually. They really went a different way, but they kept some important things, right? Like Wasabi's reliance on knives is still there. Like they noticed that and they kept it. And the whole the monster vibe on Fred is still there. Like they found a way to make him a monster, which is he's sort of this taciturn kind of surly guy in our comics, and they went a totally different way with this person in the movie. But the being able to turn him into a monster, that's cool. I mean, they acknowledged it in their own way. It's fine.
Yeah.
And they made him Stanley's son.
Yeah, that was never part of the comic.
Yeah. Is that canon? No, I'm just kidding.
Comics, but it was funny anyway.
Well, and I said that with the race bending of those characters, again, I felt like if there was anything that has kind of caught any kind of traction in the like critique of the race bending is the fact that Fred in the comics was Ainu, which is for those who may not be familiar, which is an indigenous people of Japan. And was that a conscious decision in the comics to make him an Ainu character? I mean, you don't see a lot of representation of that particular ethnicity of people in media in general. And do you think that was a lost opportunity to make the one minority character within the comic book Big Hero 6, like the rich white guy in the movie?
Until you mentioned it, I forgot that detail was even in there. Now it rings a bell. Remember that was there. Because it's not a plot point, it's not played up in comics. It's just sort of a toss away flavor in the book. So I don't feel like it was a big loss in terms of like the narrative or anything.
Yeah.
I thought that if anything the actually turning it like kaiju when we were redesigning the characters and thinking about what is Japanese and why do this book at all? What's the point of it if not to play up the Japaneseness of these characters? That's what's different about them. The first thing on our hit list was, well, when I think Japan, I think of Godzilla, I think of Mecha. How can we bring those flavors into this team? Mm-hmm. So the first thing we did was we made the robot look like a Gundam. We wanted to look like a Japanese robot. And we wanted the kaiju in there as well, which is, Fred's whole shtick. So they took a cutesier approach to it, but it at least still acknowledges that important part of the Japanese culture that and I think that's the reason they even picked to do the project in the first place. A lot of the guys over there are Japanophiles, and when they saw Big Hero 6 in the mix of Marvel books, they're like, whoa, we don't know what this is, but we can play with it.
So that leads me to my next point that I thought was really interesting about the Disney's approach to Big Hero 6 too is like we were joking earlier that like Marvel has the golden touch at the movies right now. Anything they put out is the number one biggest thing in the world. But Disney made a conscious decision to essentially divorce their interpretation, their version of Big Hero 6 from Marvel, at least in terms of marketing. You didn't see like the Marvel logo at the beginning of the film that you typically see in the front of. Even like Fox and Sony Marvel movies have the Marvel, like it's not the Marvel Studios thing, but it's still like a Marvel logo at the beginning. Why do you think? And I'll throw this to Christelle. Why do you think that Disney, since you're the Disney file, why do you think Disney decided to like not play up the Marvel connection with Big Hero 6?
I remember reading early on that they were basically going to pretend that the Marvel Cinematic Universe didn't exist in the Big Hero 6 world. And I think that because Marvel's, or what they expect from Marvel is crossover maybe. I mean, that's my guess, is like if you say that, oh, it's a Marvel thing, maybe you'll see like a little cartoon Captain America visit San Francisco at one point, and I'm like, maybe they're just trying to avoid that. Who knows? Eventually down the line, they maybe might do that. But as of right now, I think that their plans are, it's just going to exist in its own separate universe. So that might just be something.
I hadn't thought about that. What you're saying is that they didn't want people to think, if you say this is a Marvel Studios production, they didn't want people to think that it was actually tied in any way to the cinematic universe. So then they were expecting, like with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., people complain that like, where's Thor and Captain America?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why, I mean, we were talking about it earlier. I mean, that's why it's kind of disappointing sometimes, because you're like, there was no Easter egg there. But with Big Hero 6, it exists on its own, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? Like, you don't have to wait to see. I mean, like, seeing Stan was great. Like, that's the most, I think, Marvel-y in the movie it's going to get.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can't, you have, and I think that's actually the best Stanley cameo in any Marvel film.
Yeah, for sure. At this point. I mean, he did the underwear song, too.
I think that's the most line Stan's had in a Marvel movie.
I bet he was.
Those of you who stayed through the credits, at least.
Yeah. Stay through the credits, everyone. It's a Marvel movie. Come on, even if it didn't have the Marvel Studios sign.
So, David, I mean, what do you think? Is that probably the most logical reason for Disney's decision to kind of separate Marvel from Big Hero 6?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, people have thought a lot about it. I've thought a lot about why they would want to do that, and I think, I mean, it makes sense to me in a couple of different ways. One is that, let's say that they went the other way and they tried to tie it as tightly to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as they possibly could. And the trouble with that is then now their entire animated studio and all of its bandwidth is now going to be expected to crank out nothing but Marvel content, and it just becomes completely co-opted by Marvel, and I don't know if I want to see that. Like the standard films are doing great by themselves, existing great by themselves, and what I want from Disney Animation is for each movie to give me something new and awesome and different, kind of like the way Pixar started out, and is returning to at this point, but for a while veered away from. Do you remember how it was when every new Pixar project was something completely fresh and different and amazing? And
you mean before they started cranking out sequels every other year?
And prequels.
The sequels have been good. I appreciated it more. Between Toys Life and WALL-E, everything was just completely fresh and new, and that feeling returned with what Disney Animated has been doing since Wreck-It Ralph. Like, each new movie has been something completely fresh and different, and I like that. I don't really want to upset that apple cart. I kind of want them to keep doing it. I don't know if I would. I kind of want a Big Hero 6 sequel, but I kind of want something new too.
Oh, they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it.
Well, they're gonna do a Frozen sequel. That's for sure.
Are they gonna do a Frozen sequel? I don't know if they're gonna do it.
I haven't heard that yet.
I think it's all but confirmed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Disney wants to print money. They should do a Frozen sequel.
Well, I mean, they're kind
They
of trying to do it on like Once Upon a Time.
Oh God. Oh, let's not talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't just say that.
So, before we run out of time, one of the things I wanted to, it's funny that you mentioned sequel because I was going to ask, if they were to do a sequel. Well, let me ask it differently. Since we just said we don't really want a Big Hero 6 sequel, rather than that, what other?
I think I would like one, but not at the expense of other great things.
Right, of course. No, and I think everyone, especially where the film left off, one of the points that I wanted to make was that. Oh, and this ties into something that those of you who've been reading our writing about Big Hero 6 on the Nerds of Color ties into a post by one of our fellow writers, Sean Taylor, who loved the film but had some reservations about the way Wasabi was portrayed in the film, in the sense that he, and Sean Taylor's an African American writer, he felt a little uneasy about Wasabi being quote unquote cowardly in the film. I don't necessarily agree with that interpretation, although I think it's a fair one. I do think that Wasabi steps up at the end of the film, and if there is a sequel, I hope that they take him in a more heroic fashion in the sequel. That said, rather than ask what you would want to see in the sequel, because I just told everybody what I want to see in the sequel, what other obscure Marvel property do you think Disney should get a hold of and make into a multi-billion-dollar phenomenon?
Does it have to be obscure? Because I feel like what the best melding of what Disney does and what Marvel does is Spider-Man to me, honestly. Like when you take a young character who is an everyman who every boy wants to be or every girl wants to be, that's what Disney does the best. And it even shares that same first tragedy kind of thing. I would like to see that property be refreshed in animation by Disney. That would be, I think, the ultimate thing they could do.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Miles Morales. There we go.
That would be awesome. How about you, Chris?
Donald Glover.
Well, what she's doing in the Disney XD Spider-Man cartoon, so
it could happen.
There's some kismet there. How about you, Christelle? It doesn't have to be obscure, I suppose, but what Marvel property would you like to see get the Disney treatment?
That's so weird because when you think of the Disney treatment and like talking about it this past hour too, like everything gets cutesy-fied and like and now that I'm thinking about it, how weird would it be to like have like X-Men cutesy-fied? So
well, they do, like Scotty Young does the X-Men babies. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not really.
So how about Chris? I'll do this since you're the resident Disney expert on the panel. What Disney property would you like to see Marvelized?
Oh, like everyone's a superhero and
yeah.
Oh man, like I just want all the princesses to come together to just like form like one super team, and then like I don't know, Snow White's like, I'm not a damsel no more, and then she like chucks all these apples at different people. Like it would be crazy. I mean, you've seen like the fan art where they're like all wearing like I don't know, like gladiator costumes and stuff. Like that would be cool, especially for those feminists who are so anti-princess. I'm pro-princess. I mean, yeah, some of the stuff is a little bit, like, oh, I have no voice, but like there are the other things that little girls look up to, like, fighting for like your beliefs and like liking things that are weird, like humans, even though you have no legs. Like, like there are other like different things that like they could totally spin to make it like that they're superheroes. So I don't know. So Avengers Princesses is my answer.
Avengers Princesses. In fact, I think I know what Christelle's. I'm assigning you this next post right now is to write up what the Avengers Princesses look like, and maybe we can find an artist to render like Merida as Hawkeye and
yeah,
Little Mermaid as Namor or something.
Okay.
I want to thank my guest tonight, Christelle Gonzales, her first Hard NOC Life hangout. You can find her on Twitter at ChristelleXOXO. You can also find her blog. It's called Too Many Things. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully this isn't your only Hard NOC Life appearance.
Yeah. Thank you. It was fun.
Also want to thank my guest David Nakayama. You can find him on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle, David? Is it at David Nakayama?
At David Nakayama, I think.
Very creative Twitter handle. You can also find. I think you just did the cover for Scarlet Spider.
Yeah, coming very soon. There's a 3-issue Spider-Verse miniseries called Scarlet Spiders. I did the covers for those two.
So that's look for those in your comic shops soon. And I'm your host, Keith, at The Real Chow on Twitter. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Hard NOC Life. I'll see you next time.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard NOC Life, comics, movies, and TV, yo. Pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this. This is the Hard NOC Life, but not the chica kind. More like the people in the world seeking perspectives with a different line. The kids who share their interests together with a similar kind. When they said John Glover for Spider-Man, they didn't mind. The activists, directors, comments, and the lectures. Fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC.